a key part of being able to sell your supplement or whatever your bullshit, whatever wellness thing is you have to completely undermine trust in actual medicine that works. That's step one. You
Hmm.
undermine trust, and therefore then you fill that gap with crap and that
Hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
can sell. And so they're completely and fatally, frankly, interlocked with one another.
Yep.
Welcome to Disrupted Science, the occasional conversation between the authors of the upcoming book, How the Internet Disrupted Science, now available for pre order. I'm Joy Moore here with my co author, Kent Anderson, and today is Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. Hey, Kent,
Hey, Joy.
how's
Guess
it
what?
going?
It's
What?
going. Guess what? I have a book update I'm going to slip in.
Okay.
Our book was picked as one of the top science books for early next year by Publishers Weekly.
It sure was. That was exciting to see.
Yeah,
And
it's almost slipped by us both because we're just like, that can't be real.
Publishers Weekly is still a thing.
Oh,
That's
God.
I
Now,
mean, I
now,
mean, both
now.
both of these things are real and
I,
exciting.
I know, I
That's
know.
what I meant
We
to
actually,
say.
yeah, I know. It's like we're Publishers Weekly is talking about little old us, and we have a book. I
Yeah.
thought we were just kind of enjoyed talking to each other about stuff. But anyhow, so that was really cool and
Hmm.
um, and exciting because it actually looks like a really interesting list of books. But the other thing that caught my eye about the list is that they put AI stuff into science, which is interesting. So
Yeah.
we'll have to
Well, I
talk
think,
about that sometime.
yeah, I think we're definitely in good company
Yeah, some
in
good
that
books.
top 10 list. So
Yeah. So anyhow, so that was exciting, but we've got an exciting guest today, right?
we do. Um, so today we're talking with Elizabeth Jacobs, Professor Emerita in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics at the University of Arizona. She retired from academia to help found Defend Public Health, a fiscally sponsored volunteer network of public health researchers, healthcare workers, advocates, and allies who are fighting to protect the public from the Trump administration's attacks on proven science based public health policy.
Yep. And she is part of a growing network of people, and you'll hear in the interview about how they are pulling together and understanding they understand the stakes better than
Hmm.
anybody, but they're
Yeah,
also starting to understand the game better,
right.
and they're starting to
There,
play it better.
yeah, there's a network of academics and practitioners who have gotten into the communications game online in recent years, and they've come together to try to organize against this giant misinformation machine that the current administration is throwing out.
Hmm.
And so they're pulling their resources and they're gathering members and audience, but they're also helping folks on the ground who need it with
Yep.
their outreach.
And also some warning to those of you with tender ears. There are some swear words dropped in this one because we think we've reached the point where the F-bombs are necessary. So be
Mhm.
forewarned. But here we go. We'll go into our interview with Beth Jacobs.
So great to meet you. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank
We're
you so much for having me.
we're big fans of your current work. Um, but for those who don't know you, tell us about your background and how you got to be where you are today.
Sure. I just wanted to start and say, just to be very, very clear, that I am not representing the University of Arizona, even though that is exactly correct, that I have retired from that university. I would, really hate to get any of my colleagues in hot water. So yeah, my background is in actually cancer prevention is where I spent most of my career. But when I was preparing to become a mom, I was on the internet looking at vaccines. And when I did that, I ran into some very alarming claims about vaccines being dangerous. And I had the good luck and training to be able to access PubMed, the database of scientific research, to look at those claims. But I did spend about 3 hours wondering if vaccines were actually poison. So at that point, I actually shifted and added another plank to my research program where I began studying the impacts of the anti-vaccination movement. So that was sort of the second phase. And then the third phase was when, of course, when the COVID-19 pandemic began, everything I was doing pretty much switched over to that. So that's a little bit about my background.
Fantastic. So, can you tell us a little bit about Defend Public Health and does it, what does it do, how does it do it, and who are you trying to reach?
Sure. So Defend Public Health, our primary founder, Greg Gonzalez from Yale, put out a call to public health researchers right after the election. We all knew that something bad was coming, and he just queried, does anybody want to participate in sort of fighting back against what is lurking down the road? And 1,000 of us immediately responded. So we started meeting and discussing our strategies and our plans. And one of the major things we are going to be doing is unleashing state-based advocacy groups that can discuss these things at the state level. Public health is very, very central to the state. The states have a lot more power in that area than in many others. And so that's one thing that we are launching. And the other thing that we do a lot of is speaking to the media about the egregious actions that have been taken by this administration to undermine public health.
Yep.
So you published the Improving Health of Americans Together document in August. That got a lot of attention.
Good.
It was a welcome antidote to the Maha report that came out in May, which I spent way too much time going through and trying to parse some sense of reasoning when it came, especially to the references. So how did that document come together?
So Maha is smoke and mirrors. It's a really deceptive and superficial type of movement. There isn't a strong scientific evidence base to it. So what Defend Public Health did was sort of ask our members, what would effective public health look like? So one thing that we knew was that the destruction of public health was already in motion. And so we're not perfect. We did make mistakes and we totally and completely acknowledge that. But and that doesn't justify destroying the entire infrastructure of public health in any way, shape, or form. But what that does is give us an opportunity to rebuild in a different way. So what we wanted to ask our members is, what would public health look like if it was equitable and if we did have a chance to build it from the ground up? And that is how we came up with our 11 pillars, which are evidence-based. We looked at the science and we proceeded from there. And that's how we came up with our 11 pillars. It does happen that many of those pillars are in direct conflict with MAHA. For example, one of them is to improve vaccine access. And another that we address that MAHA completely ignores is reducing gun violence. Gun
Yeah.
violence is the number one cause of death of children in the United States.
hmm
Every time I say that sentence, it is shocking again. And if this administration wants to talk about a healthy America and helping children, they should be looking at reducing gun violence, and they aren't.
Yep.
And that ties into I think what you're saying is you didn't come up with this document as a full-on, point counterpoint to the Maha nonsense. This is just what is public health. And hasn't that been represented before? Why did it take having crazy stuff come in for the rest of America to learn about what is public health? Like,
You know, I don't know. I think a big problem, as you two are certainly experts in, is the information environment that we are living in right now. And there's a lot of discussion about rebuilding trust in public health, for example. And they're asking people in public health, how do we do this? And like I said, there are improvements that need to be made. I'm not arguing that there aren't. However, I will say that distrust in public health is primarily driven by disinformation on the internet that is created by right-wing outlets. And we can see that with the latest Pew Research survey, which shows that Democrats are not really changing their views on vaccines. There is only one group of people that is, and that is Republicans. Over time, it's getting lower and lower and lower. And to me, that's not an issue of public health. That's a political agenda that's now
Hmm.
become part of the MAGA identity.
Yeah, and
why did they pick
go
I was
ahead,
going to
Joy.
say, why do you think they picked this most decisive and harmful topic to focus on?
It is so divisive. And so when the Dobbs decision came down, and this again is just my personal opinion, Republicans lost a major plank in their platform that drove voters to the polls. And so they had to come up with something else. So the United States itself used vaccine disinformation against China by undermining, sending out a social media campaign in the Philippines that kept blaming China for the pandemic and saying that the Chinese vaccine was poison. It's almost identical to what is happening in the US right now. So I feel like there have been foreign influences without question, trying to undermine vaccines in the US. But a big part of it is, again, that this idea of quote unquote medical freedom is something that the Republicans have just picked up as a very useful wedge issue.
Yeah. I was at the American Academy of Pediatrics when Wakefield's initial paper was published and remember one of the pediatricians saying this is going to get bad because nobody remembers quarantines, iron lungs, polio crutches on children, all of that, the deaths, the illnesses from rubella and, all of that. And I think that's part of it is prevention can be taken for granted. And then that protection can be leveraged as this was all a mirage anyhow. That you didn't need
Absolutely.
any of that. And now you can just doubt it and you'll be safe anyhow because there's no, and it'll take a while. It's a lagging effect. They'll take immediate political advantage of it. And then later, when the death toll comes in, they'll have the blame game ready to go too, and they'll blame other people for that. So one of the things you've said, and I think incentives come down to a lot of it because the before even social media, Google was a major player in accidentally elevating anti-vaccination information. And so one of the things you've said is they're either selling something or suing someone. And that's been the case all the way back to Wakefield. He was trying to sell something and he was trying to sue people. And it's the same thing with, McCullough, with Hulsher, with RFK Jr., all of these people. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the two-sided, two-pronged grift that they're running here too?
Absolutely. So one of the things, actually, I took a sort of a backed into the vaccine stuff. As I mentioned, when I was preparing to become a mom, I started doing research in that area. But the other piece is that I did some work on dietary supplements, and they're pretty much useless, to be quite honest, unless you have a deficiency. Those two things are linked very tightly. And it's all now part of the wellness grift, quite frankly. And
Yeah.
a key part of being able to sell your supplement or whatever your bullshit, whatever wellness thing is you have to completely undermine trust in actual medicine that works. That's step one. You
Hmm.
undermine trust, and therefore then you fill that gap with crap and that
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
can sell. And so they're completely and fatally, frankly, interlocked with one another.
Yep. And it's all about money at the bottom, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, they,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
they've got
I
a
think,
lawyer, and salespeople basically
mhm.
running
And
it.
I think that's been one of the biggest challenges that I think public health professionals and doctors and clinicians have been caught on their heels is trying to react to people who have flooded the zone with trying to prove a negative, right? And giving this, filling it with this idea of we can find something that will help you and we can sell you something that is an alternative. It's a very clever propaganda marketing engine.
It absolutely is. And Paul Offit wrote a book on this very topic. I think it was called Do You Believe in Magic? And it
Yeah.
was just talking about all these factors coming together to convince people to buy supplements or whatever else. And a big part of that too is our healthcare system is so difficult to navigate. And
Hmm.
that itself also undermines trust. And it actually, in that case, understandably leads to people trying to solve their medical problems themselves
Hmm.
because it is really hard to deal with the medical system. So I
Yeah.
think that's another big piece.
Yeah, one of the things that has struck me about how social media and vaccine politics have intersected in a way is that social media makes personalization is a big thing, right? You're important in your own unique ways, and you've got your own feed, your own identity, your own profile, all this stuff. And somebody wrote, I forget, I was referenced somewhere, but that vaccines frustrate these kinds of grifters who are trying to sell you a personalized medical regimen because vaccines are like this clear liquid that goes to, with you all over the place to all parts of the world and has pretty much the same effect. It means you're not unique, and that's kind of frustrating to the grifters, right?
Yeah, I've actually never really thought much about that, but that does make sense. And it also ties into this push that we keep hearing from RFK Jr. and HHS that we need to talk about personalized medicine. That's not
Hmm.
public health.
No.
That's what you do with your doctor. That's healthcare. That's
Right.
when they're doing. But the difference is that public health, we're looking at disease moving through a community and we're trying to keep an entire community safe. And there's
Now
a
that,
big difference.
yeah, and that's the other thing is they talk about vaccination as a personal choice, but it's vaccination to me has three levels, right? You have the vaccine and its efficacy. You have vaccines getting into arms, which is vaccination, and you have to have enough of that to get to the third level where vaccines truly have their magic, which is herd immunity. And then you can get things like measles and smallpox driven to the periphery or even out of existence because the humans are so, as a population, safe from them. And that's an amazing thing that you can do, but it takes public health infrastructure and some public health mandates to get to that point.
It really does. And I mean, there's a reason that these mandates exist. It's because in the past, the United States has valued protecting entire communities over the rights of an individual. So there's this tension between the freedom from something versus the freedom to something. And we're leaning hard into the freedom to vaccinate or from vaccination mandates. We're not pushing back enough on the rest of our freedom from infectious disease. So in other
Hmm.
words, these individuals in medical freedom, they don't want medical freedom, they want freedom from consequences of their horrific decisions.
Right.
And so they want to be able to say, no, I don't want to vaccinate. So freedom from vaccination in that case. But where is our freedom from infectious disease?
Right.
That has to matter in a civilized society.
Yeah, especially when it's so clearly addressable. So, one of the other things that you talk about, social determinants of health, and you talked about gun violence being part of that, right? But you've got, they're undermining SNAP, pollution, global warming, like we mentioned, herd immunity, so many other things. And in our book, and just generally, Joy and I have kind of picked up more than a whiff of eugenics in this
Oh, yeah.
because, and so can you talk a little bit about that? What do you think?
Sure. I mean, there is a whiff of eugenics in it. There's definitely some messaging coming from HHS and either other departments and areas of the government where, it's implied, Dr. Oz is into this too, that to be patriotic, you have to eat well, you have to exercise. And that's fine and good. I absolutely am a huge proponent of exercise. I think it's the closest thing we have to a catch-all prevention strategy. But our society has made it so just the act of getting exercise can be extremely difficult. So you're hearing this from some very privileged men about go work out. Well, these guys have never been a mother who's working full time, maybe a single mom who just gets home at the end of the day. Who's going to watch her children while she goes to work out? Is there a safe place for her to exercise and her children? There could be a park nearby that is overrun with maybe not, is not safe with for her kids to go to. So these are issues that are so difficult that these superficial, lazy people in this administration can't even talk about it because they will never be able to address it, nor do they want to.
They don't want to, but at the same time, this message coming, it seems so simple. Just eat better and get more exercise and take care
Right.
of your own self.
Set up a pull-up bar in your airport like we just
Right.
did, and
But I want to, but the flip side of it are the women, the moms who have been sucked into, am I being a good mother? Am I making the right choices for myself and my children? And that has what has fueled a lot of the support. So it's a two-sided coin here. It's not just, some old privileged white guys trying to tell us what to do, but it's the effect on the broader population of very well-intentioned citizens, mothers, people of all walks of life who have now gotten stirred up on thinking like, am I doing something wrong? You know?
As you were speaking in my head, this view of Instagram just appeared in my brain.
Yeah.
Instagram is all about that. And the toxic mommy culture is just that. It is very toxic. One day for my class, when I was still teaching, I kind of did this little analysis where I looked through all the recommendations that various organizations give to parents. Like, you should read to your child X number of minutes a day. They should get this much activity. And this long list of things we're supposed to do. There's not enough hours in the day if you have a job to achieve what the recommendations are. This pressure on women is just immense. That is again being propagated by the internet. This idea of this perfect, wholesome family. It's really, really toxic. And I think about kids too, and how growing up without the internet, I use the example like there could be a party you weren't invited to, but you didn't have to see it. Now
You
you
didn't
have to
know.
see it, right? You have to see
Yeah.
all the people at the party you weren't invited to. And
Hmm.
that's the overall vibe that these mommy corners of the internet reflect to me.
Are there any internet people um within the, you talked about the leafleting of anti-vaccine, and now we're in a social media situation of leafleting, both sides are trying to blanket the population. Are there any folks that you think are doing a good job uh, that are
There's a
helping?
lot. We're finally catching up on science communication. So, if I'm looking back into the dark days when very few people were paying attention to this phenomenon, David Gorski is somebody who comes to mind immediately, and Jonathan Howard as well, who have been in this fight for a long time. Renee DiResta is another person that I follow really closely. Laura Kolodny is another one, and of course, the Blackstock sisters as well. And they have been doing a lot of good science communication. But when you're trying to promote factual information, you are pushing the boulder uphill because there's a lot of science that shows that those messages sort of die on the vine. If
Hmm.
I were to just to post vaccines are safe and effective over and over again, nobody would follow my account. Whereas people who come up with these really frightening types of stories, they get a lot of traction on the internet, and that's just a part of human nature.
Mhm.
Um, but to me, the way to solve that is social media companies would need to actually decide to have some standards,
Hmm.
and there's no motivation for them to do that because engagement drives money and controversy drives engagement. So why
Yeah.
would they try to stop this
Well, it's
controversy?
their enragement machines, right?
Yes,
And that's the
yes,
problem with, good science-based messaging is, in my mind, I always picture, which, how many cash registers are ringing in their algorithm, right? And good information, maybe one cash register every once in a while because you or I or Joy will go like, oh, that's nice, vaccines are safe. Give it a little love. But then if you put out something outrageous, then all three of us respond, right? And then
right.
all the, extremists that have been brought, stirred up, they respond, and Facebook and Instagram and all those cash registers start ringing like crazy, and the enragement machine keeps going. So,
And
You
in a
know,
way, the enrichment machine is being fueled by scientific papers in a way that has never been the case before, whereas everybody every second has another paper to prove their idea or to disprove else's idea or to put their own spin on it.
right.
And I think that's where we come in and looking at like what's going on with scientific journals and the publishing industry that has created this open open access field of papers in the name of promoting science that's also promoting misinformation. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but you two are far more expert in this area than I am. But I will say, when I started my career, the very first paper I had published was in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. And I sent the paper, the printout, via US mail to them. I got my reviews back via US mail, and I responded to them. Like that is so I have been through this whole arc of where it was difficult to submit a paper. There were really high standards. Then the internet happens, and I remember thinking, this is great. It's so much easier to submit, electronically. And then the avalanche of online journals came, and of varying quality. And what that has done has really stretched the reviewer pool very, very thin. So I used to get probably 10 requests to review papers every week, at least before I retired.
Hmm.
I can't do that. My rule of thumb was to review as many papers as I had published. So if I had one published, I'd review one, and that could be 10, 12 papers a year. Um, but we don't have the power, the pool of people who can actually review all these articles with expertise. So that means that people without expertise are reviewing it, or they can't get a reviewer at all. So
Mhm.
that's a
Right.
big problem.
Yep. So some of the
So,
other allies that you have, sorry, Joy, I'll
no, no, go ahead.
I'll go ahead, are the state and major medical societies, and they are, making recommendations that are also not working with, are defying HHS and CDC nonsense. So, how are you also working with the major medical societies like AAP and AJ and things like that?
I would say we're most aligned with APHA, the American Public Health
Hmm.
Association.
Makes sense.
Um, yeah, they've been very outspoken about what is going on to a degree that other major medical orgs maybe have not as much. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics is certainly coming forward to provide good information and critique, but some of the other organizations haven't been quite as active. And I do show a little bit of grace there sometimes because I was raised as an academic to keep my mouth shut and to not speak out about anything. It was like science, 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 science.
Yeah.
And what you're hearing from me now is years of evolution of realizing that being quiet is not going to save any of us right now. And I say this, my colleagues need to do what they need to do to survive right now. I completely understand and support that. Um, they're looking at their livelihood just being pulled out from under them, and it's happened to thousands and thousands of scientists already. So I understand that, but I do think these professional organizations need to get the hell out and start doing things, not just saying, but taking actions to protect these science-based interventions that we know work. The
Hmm.
time to be quiet about this has passed. Greg Gonzalez just published an excellent article in The Nation
Hmm.
earlier this week saying exactly this, that it is time for us to all move forward and not sit there and watch this happen anymore because being quiet is not going to save any of us at this point.
Yeah, one of
And
the
the
things that has
and the
surprised us, sorry, Joy, I'm jumping in, I'm doing it. I told you I wouldn't.
well, I just no, it's okay. But the politeness and the reservedness of scientists as part of the culture, the discipline is we I have found this. I could be the maybe first person who thought of this thing, but this is going to require future investigation is part of the culture that is being completely pounced on by these assholes who are trying to change the conversation to say you can't trust these people because they don't have an answer. And I think that's and to your point where people rely on these norms and the practices for their careers and but also just like everything doesn't make sense anymore.
It really doesn't. And again, like there is a humility to science. We talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. Like I am lucky during my career that I did maybe two things that have maybe influenced public health policy. It's incremental change in science, and it's very rare that there's a enormous paper that changes policy instantly. One that I could think of is the Women's Health Initiative study, which showed
Hmm.
the impact of hormone replacement therapy possibly being associated with breast cancer. And overnight, that disappeared. But those studies are very few and far between. So
But it
there
was
is a,
also how many years in the making to
yeah, oh,
gather
sure.
that, yeah.
Right.
It was a huge study and it was many, many years in the making. And by the way, it was started because researchers realized that nobody was doing work on women's health issues. For
Hmm.
years, it was all men, 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 men. So
Right.
that's how that study came into being.
Right. And women just got hysterectomies and we were all good. Right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Genius. Great, great times, guys. Jeez.
That's right.
So
Um,
what could folks like us who work in the scientific publishing and communications space do to help you?
I just appreciate again the acknowledgement of what social media and the internet is doing to science. I think that that is such a critical aspect that you're studying. I will tell you that there was some time in the, I want to say 2013, 14, somewhere in there, that the National Cancer Institute was doing this initiative called Provocative Questions, and they traveled around the country to ask scientists what some provocative questions would be to study. And I said Twitter. I said, we need to study Twitter. I'm seeing this messaging that started on Facebook that was anti-vaccine, and now it's moved to Twitter. And there were about 30 people in the room who just looked at me like I'd grown another head. I mean, this is a true story. And I said, does anyone else have a Twitter account? And nobody did. And I could see it then. And I regret to this day that I did not push that harder. It was definitely swept aside at that time. So we are, as you said very early on, Joy, we are way behind in people who are spreading misinformation everywhere. And that is because of our training and how we were taught to have some humility. And certainly at first, we were taught that the internet was pretty much beneath us. We were not to comment,
Hmm.
we were not to have a
Mm-hmm.
public profile. It was considered to be trivial. And it's only now that we're realizing the importance of science communication.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, as far as the difference in cultures, right? So you have science culture done right, which is incremental findings, communities processing information carefully and coming to conclusions gradually and making recommendations to fit their piece of service into the puzzle of larger public service, right?
Right.
That's science done right. Then you have these clowns who come in with a narrative. And that's why it works on social media, right? Because, like you said, science doesn't find answers. Science finds findings, makes claims that then ultimately can generate up into something that you can temporarily put in place. Maybe this year, we find out that kale's great again, and God, I hope not. But anyhow, but you
No,
get
it
these
is if
kinds
you
of,
cook it right.
okay, we'll talk later. But you know what I mean? It's just the little things that, come in and nudge things, but they have this narrative, right? They have this narrative that feeds a grift, that lines their pockets with lawsuits and supplements. And a narrative works really well on social media. So I guess that my question is, I mean, you put together the document and all of that. That's a very scientific thing. Is there a narrative that needs to be a little bit more, have more oomph to it? I know Greg does great stuff, and he's maybe headed down that road.
So it's such a difficult question because I think the narrative overarching from where I'm sitting is public health is everywhere and it's affecting you even if you don't know it. You can't see us, but you will. And so I think one of the things that we need to make really clear is something that's really difficult for a lot of people to understand, which you just alluded to earlier, Kent, which is when you're doing work in prevention, you do not see the outcome for years. And so I think we need to be clear that even though we may not see massive outbreaks of vaccine preventable disease in the next year or two, we will see it if we continue down this path, which I see no reason why anyone is going to stop Mr. Kennedy at this point. Um, and so I think making it very clear that just because we can't see it, it's actually happening, doesn't mean it's not happening is something, a point we need to get across.
Yeah.
But again, it's really difficult to come up with that narrative. And I'll tell you another reason why, that we do a lot of strategic planning and defend public health, but not a week goes by without Kennedy dropping a Molotov cocktail into whatever it is we're trying to plan. We have to respond. He's done something fucking crazy again, right?
Yep. Right.
So
And
Yep.
so I wanted to
The
ask you
chaos is a
about that.
strategy.
it
No, the
is.
chaos is a strategy, but it is it's very targeted. They've targeted certain committees, they've targeted certain topics, and they've done it consistently since day one. And do you have any insight into the propaganda machine or the people behind him? These are not his ideas. There's definitely people creating this roadmap to chaos to put it in your lap, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Project 2025, right there.
Mhm.
And although some of this is straight out Kennedy, I believe he's feathering his nest for when he
Hmm.
leaves government. A
Yep.
lot of the things and actions he's taken, I believe he has done so that he can improve his law firm's ability to sue all areas of anything related to vaccines. So the first thing you noticed is that some headlines were saying the CDC changes course on vaccines and autism. That did not happen. RFK Jr. made them put this bullshit on the CDC website. And
Hmm.
but it won't matter 3 years from now when he's arguing something in court and they say, look, the CDC admitted that they were wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
And unless you're completely immersed in this topic, you have no way of knowing that that is a completely false statement. So, it's so deep. And then his own personal attorney just washed up at the ACIP meeting to talk for an hour and a half about everything that's wrong with vaccine testing from a guy who doesn't know a damn thing
Hmm.
Yeah.
about vaccines. Uh,
Yep.
it's
And
coming
the
from everywhere.
yeah, and the other big concern is around the data that the government has controlled. They've been the shepherds of public health data. And so them having control of the VAERS database or the narrative around the VAERS database, that seemed like that was like point number one of like, let's get in here and let's get control of the narrative of
Let's screw with
public.
the data.
Well, they're not screwing with it. They're interpreting it in ways that it
Hmm.
wasn't intended,
Right.
and creating.
They absolutely are. And I actually agree with Ken. I made a prediction back in, I don't know, March, April, sometime that it was only a matter of time before RFK Jr. was going to start manipulating data to make things appear to be real that are not. And one way they are doing that is with VAERS, which again collects any report on a potential adverse event. Even if you don't believe it's related to the vaccine, you're encouraged to report it. And that's a good thing, right? It's an early
Hmm.
Mhm.
warning system. But the problem is that they're taking those reports and they're not comparing the rate of certain conditions that they see among people with people who are not vaccinated because those people are not in the VAERS database. The only thing it
Hmm.
collects is data on post-vaccine issues. And
Reporting.
as an epidemiologist, like that's a personal affront to me because you have to have a comparison population and they don't.
Right. Well, and they also have that gateway initiative or whatever they call it for AI. And one of the little things they sneaked into that, and I can't seem to get anybody to perk up to it like I did, but they said it also allows them to evaluate science using synthetic data.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you know how big a truck I can drive through that particular phrase as a loophole? Wake up, people, because that means that who knows what it means. But I've been testing, some AI systems very recently, and they're garbage. It always is garbage. I mean, it's just garbage technology, and nobody, we need to get rid of it. But they're embracing AI. They're embracing synthetic data. They've got a narrative. It's I mean, I'm very worried about where this is going. So I'm really glad you're doing what you're doing. I think the scientific publishers, I've been shocked at how quiet they've been about this too, and the journal editors. I think it gets into that same thing. But to me, those people always had more of a bully pulpit. And when I was going, early on in my career, they were big voices and big personalities, and you didn't mess with them. And now they seem cowed. So I'm a little worried about that too.
Well, absolutely. And then not only do you have journals being cowed, but you have entirely false, fake journals that are now
Right.
appearing.
Yeah.
It's really insidious. And by the way, I hadn't heard that about synthetic data. That is very alarming. And I have to say, the bottom line is that none of us have any reason to trust that anyone in charge of our public health data right now, um, at Kennedy's HHS, is going either even knows how to analyze and handle those data. They're
Mhm.
hiring cranks and quacks and people who've had numerous papers retracted. There is no
Medical
reason.
licenses pulled, all of that.
Yes, there's no
Well, it's
reason to trust these people.
no, and on the point of the synthetic data and the alignment with AI, they're also defunding basic research and pulling animal models. And that's another appeal to, I guess, apparently people care about that. Um,
Right.
and so they're aligning with the administration's, tech. Let's use some computers to do things, and let's doge the rest of this messy stuff away.
So one of the more interesting narratives I've heard nibbling around the edges is that all of this stuff around getting rid of green energy and wind, power and solar power and addressing climate change is really about big oil, right? And
Yeah.
all of the attacks on public health are really about enabling big pharma because you want more sick people so you can sell more drugs. And people don't appreciate that public health keeps you out of big pharma,
Yeah.
and going with
That's
clean
right.
power keeps you out of big pharma, and also makes you independent as a nation or as a town or as a house. You know, so I think this kind of independence and freedom are things that public health and green energy and social determinants of health should all own those topics, right? But these
I
people have appropriated them somehow.
No, I love how you put that all together. I mean, it often comes up that, public health is everything. It's everywhere. And these things are all very much linked. I completely share your opinion. If we move toward green energy, we would solve a lot of problems,
Hmm.
both in terms of health and, not needing to involve ourselves in trying to get oil from various and sundry places. Um, so yeah, I mean, your point is very well taken, and there is a lot of similarity. And I just do need to give a shout out to the climate scientists who have been going through this for decades.
That is true.
Um,
Yeah.
we are only now in public health experiencing the same level of sabotage. It's literal sabotage that those scientists have gone through for decades.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, I'm cognizant of the time, and so I want to, if we can, move on to discoveries of the week, and we'll end on some high notes, hopefully. All right, Beth, do you
Um,
want to kick us off?
Sure. So I think the a good discovery of the week in public health was that there was a paper published out of France. I think it was late last week, that had 22 million plus people in it, and they studied the COVID-19 vaccine, and health conditions and mortality among those who are vaccinated against COVID-19 and those who were not. And they found that, of course, the number of cases of severe COVID-19 were substantially 75% lower among those who are vaccinated, but also all-cause mortality was significantly lower in the 4 years following vaccination against COVID-19.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
we are hearing a lot of scuttlebutt about how the COVID-19 vaccine has killed children. No evidence has been produced to support that. And in fact, Defend Public Health has published a report showing the why that is why we know that COVID-19 vaccine hasn't been killing children. So it's really nice to have this study showing that, in fact, it's associated with lower mortality for up to 4 years after vaccination.
That's
And
great.
the all cause is very it's something that people who understand epidemiology and scientific papers get right away, but most people don't. And I think that's what's been really hijacked by the misinformation propagandists is that they've picked up on mortality post vaccine and highlighted things without putting it into that overall perspective.
Yeah, and they look at
Right.
cadavers and things like that, so people are already dead. So and those people can tell no tales. But this is why whenever I go and get a vaccine, and the doctor's like, do you want to get your flu shot?" I'm like, "Yes, I want 3 of them, please."
You and me both, Kent.
You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because
exactly.
they have great benefits that I don't even know about, and I anyhow I think vaccines just gradually make you superhuman. So
I
Yeah.
wish. I mean, but they certainly protect you, and it is incredibly hard to believe that we are where we are right now in the United States.
yeah,
It's
but that's a great
overwhelming.
discovery. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. So thank you for that.
All right, fabulous.
Do you want me to go next, Joy, or do you want to go next?
I'll go next because mine is silly, but slightly scientific. So it might be a good segue to yours.
Which is purely mine is purely indulgent.
I learned this week because we had a cold snap. I'm here in Virginia and we don't get a lot of snow, but when we do, it's like the sky is falling. And so people have been worried about freezing to death and using these hot hand warmers to keep their hands and feet cold. And I've learned that they are being hacked because people have taken them apart, looked on the internet, and learned that they're magnetic. And so there's a whole YouTube subculture of people trying to make their own hot hand warmers out of magnets and concrete or whatever else is in there. So that's my discovery of the week.
That's what our citizen scientists are up to these days.
Yep, yep.
Oh, wow. Impressive people. Impressive.
So Beth, put that on your radar for the next, Instagram mom hack, how
Right.
to keep my children warm with magnets. I don't
I
know.
will.
Just don't
Those
let
things
them
are,
eat them.
I don't know what the obsession is with magnets with these folks. Like, really. I mean,
well, have you ever seen them? They're so strange. It's spooky, spooky action at a distance.
Isn't it? Who was it?
absolutely.
Wasn't that a
Magnets are
That
terrifying.
That's
who was it
quantum.
who said, was it a Trump thing? He's like, magnets, how do they work? We don't know.
Yeah, no, he put it in water and this and that. I mean, the guy's Looney Tunes, but we all know that. I mean, he shouldn't be anywhere near power. But speaking of power, ooh, did you like that segue?
Yeah.
So it's the holiday time. We have a house in New England. There's snow on the ground, and so we always put candles in our windows, right, to make our house look pretty. And we have always plugged them in and gone around and turned them on. And then before you go to bed, you go around and turn them off. And this year we discovered that there are battery powered candles that you can cluster them all on a table, use a remote, turn them all on, and then set the number of hours that you want them to stay on. And then you distribute them around your windows, and then they turn on at that time, turn off that many hours later, and then turn on the next day at that time. So it's like having built in servants. It's amazing. It's like the house just lights up, and you're like, oh, thank you, ghosts. So, holiday ghosts, the holiday spirits are working at our house.
I have to say, Kent, I really appreciate that because one of my warmest memories from growing up in Pittsburgh was those
Mm.
lights in my room. And there was a particular light in my bedroom that just made me sleep so comfortably because Christmas was coming. And
Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
so
Yeah.
thank
Hmm.
you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
and Pittsburgh is a great city. I love that
Thank
city.
you. All right,
Yeah.
you're my friend forever, Kent.
All right, Beth, thank you for doing
Thank
this, and we
you
really
so much.
appreciate it.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having me and have a
this
great
has been
rest of your
great.
day.
All right.
All right.
Well, that was awesome. Uh, thanks
Yeah,
so
she's
much, Beth,
terrific.
for hanging out with us and giving us a piece of your mind and some ideas about what the rest of us can do to help you in your efforts.
Yeah, we're going to send her a t-shirt for those of you on
Yep.
video. So
If anybody else wants
just
one,
email
let us
us.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks to our friends at Provoke the Truth for the music. And as always, let us know what you think. You can keep up with developments at the Geyser, of course, where you can subscribe to support our efforts. Finally, you can reach us at disruptedscience@gmail.com with any comments on this episode or any ideas for future episodes.